purpose of this video is to spark an informative discussion on sequels. For this discussion, we will use the formal definition of sequel as it pertains to video games, which is the medium we are focusing on. In current gaming culture, sequels often make or break the credibility of game developers. Recently, it is evident that some developers and majorities of consumers have missed the point of sequels. An issue that prevails is that most people who introduce themselves to a series are not starting from the premiere title. I too have to admit of being guilty of this sin, as I've started with Uncharted 2 and Mass Effect 2 first. I think it is a huge and sad realization that some players may experience a single title and feel that they have the gist of the series. In some respects, I can't blame them. Weak story writing, continuity, and game atmosphere and controls can make certain entries in a series stand out more than the rest of the entries, and thus waver interest for other related works. A reason why some entries are more prominent than their counterparts is because of issues with nostalgia and consistency. Developers sometimes have a difficult time pinpointing what elements made the original game so great. For example, Sonic. Venturing towards a new and different Sonic's transition from 2D to 3D only saw success in a couple games on the Dreamcast, but was unfortunately overshadowed by a slew of terrible iterations afterwards. In addition, with technological advances in priorities and engine overhauls, games are developed to be more technically inclined rather than for the user experience. A common misconception is that more is better. This statement is only partially true. While more content is always good, less time is being spent refining and polishing the more important elements of a game, such as tuning controls, tweaking graphical errors and bugs, and audio issues. This holds especially true when developers are trying to meet a deadline. When developers try to meet their deadlines, content gets cut or worse, becomes on-disc DLC. Some major publishers and developers base their workflow on mainstream successes, and so are less willing to take risks and explore creativity. This makes games hard to differentiate from one another. That's why some games feel formulaic or clones of each other. A few examples are the first Darksiders game, the original Saints Row before it developed itself as a parody, and Castlevania Lords of Shadow. As is usually the trouble of starting out, eventually these series grew and became their own entities after reiterations and development. Personally, I feel developers should make each game its own entity. In my opinion, the Street Fighter series is a good example of individuality. Each entry in the series is a unique game overhaul, and each is recognized by its individual merits. Sure, balanced updates of the past created multiple new title entries, but it was meant for the competitive scene where digital online patching didn't exist yet. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but I feel main character arcs and stories should be finished in the one game they were introduced in. Early Final Fantasy titles were like this, and that's why each had their own specific appeal. If you want to continue a character story, then release it as DLC like Red Dead Redemption or Far Cry 3. You might be hesitant on the idea of DLC, but it's only bad if handled poorly. If the DLC expansion doesn't interest the consumer and they're happy with the current game ending, then the player can choose to skip out on buying it. Not to mention, it would be a lot cheaper than buying a whole new $60 game. The video game industry can do with a lot less oversaturation with unnecessary sequels. Unfortunately, that's all we have for today. Hopefully this serves for an interesting conversation and for future debates. If you would like to see more videos like this one, please leave a comment below and make sure to hit that subscribe button for more future content.